My name is Glenn Vogel, and I am an addict. I have a very bad habit. I like to grab a shovel, and I like to spend a lot of time in the woods, and I like to dig objects. I've dug anywhere. I've dug in Philadelphia. I've dug outhouses. I've dug in New York City. I've dug outhouses. I've dug local farm dumps. I dig wherever I possibly can. This case over here is mostly stuff that I dug in the 90s in Philadelphia when I joined a crew digging outhouse pits. And then this over here is mostly local stuff that I dig. I dig a lot of, there's a couple dumps in Long Branch that I dig. I dig a dump in Lakewood. But whenever I can get out, I am digging. It drives my wife crazy. And in the course of digging, you come home with a lot of stuff. So you have to decide what you like to collect, what's your fancy. I started out collecting medicines and cure bottles. Then I went to fruit jars, and along the lines I got interested in the local beer bottles, the blob tops. You get a lot of those when you're digging. So I started collecting all of Monmouth County. At one point in time I had about 700 blob top beers from Monmouth County. And Long Branch, being number one in the top of having about 150 guys bottling beer, mostly in the late 1880s up to about 1900. And after a while I started thinking, who are these guys? What did they do? Where did they come from? So I started researching, and with friends with Randy and all that helped me get along. And I spent a lot of time in the libraries. I spent a time looking at microfilm, and I learned a little bit about who these guys were. Some of them are rare. Some of them never even went into business. They had their glass blown. The only way you could bottle beer in Monmouth County was you had to go in front of the judge to get a license. And if the judge turned you down, then it was all for naught. And a lot of guys went up, before the judge and didn't get their license, and then they sold their bottles to another bottling company. So a lot of times there's a progression. You can make a line of where all these guys are. So I brought a few of some of my more favorite ones, and a few to tease a couple local collectors that are here. I'm not the only Long Branch collector. There's actually two serious Long Branch collectors of bottles here in the room, and I knew that they would possibly come, so I brought some of the ones that they may not have. Right, Bill?
That's correct.
Yeah, and so anyway, again, I did research a lot of these guys, and I found out a little bit of information about them. Some of them were noteworthy businessmen, and some of them were really bad. They were fly-by-nights. They were always in trouble with the law. They actually I had to enact laws to protect the bottling companies, because guys would use these bottles within their own business. It was easy to get a bunch of bottles back to your bottling works and just slap a label over the guy's slug plate, and then turn around and use that as your bottle. So in 1881 they enacted the New Jersey Bottle Protective Act, which gave the bottlers protection of people using their glass. Actually the organization was really powerful, because these bottles, they call them lightning stoppers because of the ease of opening them, and the housewife would reuse these bottles for ketchup, and they would put oil in them. We dig them when they're full of oil. We dig them full of food. And the agent for the Bottling Protective Association could actually go into your house and recover all the bottles.
Right.
Yeah, without even they could, if they saw bottles in your house, they could come into your house and take the bottles. Like, you can get away with that. That can't happen now. Yeah. So the bottling companies, after the agents would recover the bottles, they would take them back to the bottling companies, and they would turn them in for like 2 or 3 cents. The companies would have to pay to get their bottles back to the agents. But we find out that when we're digging, we'll dig into a pocket of 100 blob tops like this, and all the tops are knocked off. So instead of returning the bottles back to where they were supposed to, they would just knock the tops off. So the bottles themselves were the most expensive part of the whole operation. And a lot of guys use stoneware jugs. I have a few. I know Bill has a few. Other collectors have a few of the jugs. The jugs were made out in Vogel Brothers out at the pottery. You know, they would come down and you would have your name put on, and the only reason the name was put on the jug was so you would get it back. Again, everything was a deposit. You had to, you know, you left 5 cents to take out a case, or you left 5 cents to take out a jug because they really wanted to get the jugs back. I mean, these slug plates were registered trademarks with the county. So again, part of the Bottle Protective Association. So some of the ones that I brought along that I like a lot, a couple early ones. This is Enoch Lippincott. He had his bottling works was at the railroad tracks right out here on Broadway, and he bottled from 1859 up till when he passed away in 1863. So a few, or 1883 actually, because this is one of his rare examples that are actually dated 1873. It's the only one I've ever seen. And here's and when he fell ill, he put out this little sign renting out the bottling works. You can the old bottling establishment belonging to E. Lippincott, a Long Branch, 2 sets of fountains, all the apparatus attached, syrup, copper large enough to make 80 gallons of syrup. It'll be rented on easy terms for the season or by the year, with the privilege of buying the same on account of ill health. Established 1859. So he was one of the earlier, definitely one of the earlier bottlers in Long Branch. Another early bottler was Thomas McKenna. They owned the Arcade Hotel, which was at where Broadway split, North and South Broadway. Right at the branch there was the Arcade Hotel. McKenna had that hotel for a long, long time. Another squad I have here is from Bennett from Long Branch, and I've never found out a shred of information on him. I don't know how long, I don't know where he was bottling at, and I don't know where he was addressed at. Nothing has ever turned up about this guy. Some of the other earlier ones I have, let's see. This is by far one of my favorites is Brown Saloon, Long Branch. Mid 1880s era. The only thing I found out that he was on Broadway, but I don't know exactly where. Really scarce. There's probably only 3 of these known. Another early bottler was William Quasick, and I always love them when they say Long Branch City. This one has Long Branch City on it. That's really cool. And another variation. He was only in business for like 5 years, but he managed to have 2 different styles of bottles. Another guy that I like a lot is Joseph Hirschfeld. He was a very large organization. He had like maybe 15 or so different embossed bottles. I've dug like a dozen of these signs out of the dump over there by Monmouth Lanes, and a nice little advertising piece from his son for Siegfried's anniversary souvenir, 1883 to 1903. Joseph Hirschfeld and Sons, Long Branch, New Jersey, 20 years on the job. Siegfried Hirschfeld, a friend in need. Not too many. You have one of these too, Bill. Yeah, there's not too many of those around. And in 1889, Hirschfeld bought out Quasick. So what he would have done with the bottling association is he would relist his bottling company with using that these bottles were his property now. So these bottles slid into his little corner, and those were his now. One of the bad guys was. All the guys that were around Springdale Avenue were kind of like bad guys. Sam Nathanson was in trouble more than any bottler I've ever run across in Monmouth County. He was constantly getting taken to court for using other people's bottles, and he would do the same thing. He would, the bottles would come back into his bottling works. He would slap a label over the slug plate and send them right back out. So he was one of the reasons why we had to have the Bottle Protective Association. So they did take him to court, and he went in and out of business maybe a dozen times. They would revoke his license, and he would rent his bottling works out to another guy, and then that guy would bottle for a couple of years, and then Nathanson would get his license back, and he would bottle for a little while, and then he would get revoked again. And yeah, he was in business from like 1889 to about 1915, on and off, many times. But there's a few other Springdale Avenue bottlers, Grandinetti, and I know he used Nathanson's bottling works, and there was another one over there too, another Italian. That was the Italian section. So, yeah, Nathanson was a bad guy. And actually, in 1915, when he finally got revoked for his license, he became a jeweler. And that was it. No more bottling, and he was a jeweler. I have plotters that have his business on them. So then we move along a little bit, and I brought another one of the ones I like. This is Kensington Bottling Works, James Filiello from Long Branch, with a nice little sailing ship on the front of it. We call these picture blobs. In the collector world, people specifically will buy bottles if they have a picture on them. There's Tomani's from Long Branch. They were also in the Springdale area too, and they have anchors on theirs. Hirschfeld has the horseshoe, which is another one. But this has always been a popular one, and it took a little bit of work the Kensington section of Long Branch was kind of a funny little area, because for a while it belonged to Eatontown, and then it belonged to Long Branch, and then when West Long Branch split from Eatontown, it became part of Long Branch again. So they say Long Branch, but I still think that they're probably actually West Long Branch Bottling Company. That Kensington section, I think now, is in West Long Branch. I don't think it's in Long Branch. So his address in the directory was Upper Broadway at the town limit. So that's that area. Oceanport Avenue on it would be across from Dunkin' Donuts on the corner. That's where this bottling works was at.
What makes it turn purple?
The bottle industry in the 1890s thought that everything would look more attractive in clear glass. In order to make clear glass, they would add manganese to the glass, and manganese reacts with the sun. So anytime you're digging in a dump and you see purple glass, so you know you're digging a pre-World War I dump, because they stopped using manganese just before World War I, because they needed it for war production, and they put selenium in it to turn it clear after that, and that in the sun would kind of turn a gray color. So the sun-colored amethyst bottles are they're a little bit more sought after than this bottle would be worth a little bit more, and it would actually turn a little bit darker amethyst if I left it out in the sun some. Another bottler I like is Jacob Gassman, and I always love labeled stuff, because all the information that you need about this company is on his label. He went into business in 1903, and I think he was out of business by 1907. He wasn't in business long, but the label is great. It's a Pabst Milwaukee beer. Tells you his address, 21 Liberty Street. This one here is guaranteed under the Pure Food and Drug Act in 1906. So we know that this beer bottle was probably used right at the end of his business. He didn't last much longer. Yeah, the Pure Food and Drug Act changed a lot of how these bottling companies work too. It was a lot of these closures were not sanitary, and it did force most of the bottling companies to go from these lightning stoppers, which were very hard to clean, because when the bottles came back into the bottling works, they would just rinse it out and send it back out, and all kinds of crap get underneath those. So the Pure Food and Drug Act actually forced them to go to the crown tops, which were a little bit more sanitary, kind of the stoppers that we use today. Another guy that I like a lot is John Helt. He was another one of the good guys. He was in business on Liberty Street, 45 Liberty Street, for like 1886 to right about 1917. And he has many different bottles. And again, I love them with the labels on them. It tells you everything about it. Ballantine Export Beer, bottled by John Helt, Liberty Street, corner of Monmouth Avenue, Long Branch. I brought these two bottles along. I had a billhead at home, which I forgot. And you're probably wondering, why did I bring New York City bottles with me? But Carl Schultz had a depot in Long Branch from about like 1889 to about 1915. And he would distribute, his New York City mineral water through the depot on Morris Avenue. It was 179 Morris Avenue was where his depot was. So, and he was a soda and mineral water bottler. He didn't do beer at all. And what else do we have? I brought this guy along. I didn't see it. Do you have a John Estacia in your case, Peter? Not sure. John Estacia was another bottler. He bottled. He was on Norwood, and right at the corner of Norwood and Wall. And there's actually the building is still there. In fact, I have a. Aha. This is a photo postcard of his store. I should put that out. Yeah, that building is still there. It's on the corner of Wall and Norwood, and that's where John Estacia had his grocery store, and he also did a little bottling on the side. I brought along, because I couldn't find my John Estacia, which is really weird because it's not that rare of a bottle, so I brought the incredibly rarer, one of his son's bottles, and it's a Paul Anastasia beer bottle of Little Silver. There wasn't too many bottlers that came out of Little Silver. So this is a very rare bottle, and I dug this bottle about a month ago. Right by the train station, they cleared a lot. And my friend Chris Myers went by and he said, I should go check that lot out because he said it looks like there's bricks and stuff all over. So we actually went back together on Sunday morning and we dug right along. There's a little creek in the middle of it. We dug along that creek, and this was one of the only good bottles that came out of there. We dug some Red Bank, some crates from Red Bank, and a couple Crown Top Hilts came out of there, and some food bottles. But man, what a treat it was to dig this, because I had one of these for a long time, and in order to get this bottle, I had to trade one of these. And I always thought that I'll get one of these because this is like 1890s. Before I ever see another one of these 1873s again. So it worked out good. I didn't even have to wait a year before I got this bottle back. Over in the Branchport section, there were a few bottles also. Benjamin Mazza had a bottling works in Branchport, and he also had another bottling works on John Street. And finding out information in the Branchport section has been very, very difficult. This guy is one of my favorites, is because I actually live right around the corner from where his bottling works really was. I don't know why he has a bottle embossed with Branchport on it. It's like so far away. His bottling works and hotel were actually at the back end of Colonial Terrace on Wickapeco, which is just around the corner from where I live. And this is more what you should see as Ocean Township Bottling Works. And so I don't know how he strayed over to Branchport. There's been no information that I can turn up on why he did that. Let's see who else is here. Another bottler that I like is, and this one I dug last weekend. This is like fresh. We call them fresh when we just get them out of the ground. This again came from, we call it the Swamps of Long Branch. We're digging behind what used to be the Monmouth Lanes. The dump has been dug for like 30 years. And my digging partner Glenn and I decided we were going to try to redig it just to see. And we found out there's sections of it that are not dug down to the bottom. So it's kind of a hideous place to dig. In fact, most of the places that we dig now are really hideous. All the easy spots are gone. So we really work hard for this glass. But everything is underwater. You can't see. I know what everything sounds like underwater. I know if it's a brick. I know if it's a piece of broken china. I know if the glass is broken. And but this came out this weekend, and we call this another picture blob with a nice big 4 on it. That's all. Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
Are any of the buildings left? You mentioned one grocery store. But other than that, are any of the other plants left?
Yeah, not that I can. Not in Long Branch, no.
Isn't there down Tamains, I think? Isn't it still there?
Which one?
Tamains down, I guess it's Winter Street or Summer Street?
I think the building.
Springdale Avenue.
The
Yeah.
building.
530 Springdale Avenue. Building's still there.
Because Tomani's last the bottling works where they were doing the Sunny Beverages, where I met Sonny Tomani.
Yeah.
That building is still there. That's on Overton.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right on the corner of
It's
Overton.
sorta, yeah.
Yeah, I mean Griffin Park. There's still one building left of Griffin's over in Wanamassa, but no, most of these buildings are gone. Red Bank, most of the buildings in Red Bank where they bottled are still there, but Long Branch has gone on such dramatic changes here lately that you know, a lot of these guys, like you know, this guy, we forgot this guy, him, like Morin. He owned the Germania Hotel. Which was down by the ocean, and then when he sold out that, you know, the Werbeck brothers, they took it over, and they ran the Germania Hotel all the way up to 1900. But no, in Long Branch it's tough. There's I think Helt's house is still there, but the barn behind it is gone. You know, most of these guys bottled in a barn behind their house. There was
one of those bottles. Where was that?
John Helt? Yeah, he was on Liberty and Mama Street.
Okay.
Liberty, yeah, corner of Liberty and Mama Street. I think at 45 Liberty was how it was addressed in the directory. Trying to think, but yes.
You know, one more question. You mentioned Valentine and Pabst.
Mhm.
What was the deal between these bottlers and these beer companies? Did they make the beer and bottle it? Did trucks
before
come in with the beer and
before
did the
19
bottling?
before 1900, the breweries were not allowed to bottle their own beer. They could only sell it wholesale in casks. So these bottling companies all became agents for the different companies. You know, like Gassman was the agent for Pabst, and Helt was the agent for Ballantine. I think Classic was Bartels, and Hirschfeld did about 4 different beers. All out of Bartholomew's. There was a couple others in New York that he did. Yeah, and that was a couple of things really killed the bottling companies, because after 1900, the amount of bottling companies are nearly cut in half. One, because the new judges out in Freehold were getting very strict with the licensing. Before in 1880s, if you went up and you wanted to get a license to bottle beer, you'd have to have 4 witnesses to say it's okay for you to bottle beer, or it'll be your upstanding guy to bottle beer. So you get 4 of your friends to say, yeah, if we want this guy to bottle beer for us, for sure. And they would just hand out a license. Like say in 1890, there was 150 people bottling beer in Long Branch. It's like, yeah, and by 1910, there was like 20, maybe not even 20 were left. And then with Prohibition coming along, and a really strong temperance movement, a lot of people don't realize how strong the temperance movement was in Monmouth County. I mean, it was quietly eroding a lot of these beer companies, and the temperance movement was very powerful politically in Monmouth County. And they got the judges on their side, and they were just knocking the licenses out. So, guys like Helt were, they were really upstanding. And I mean, Helt actually last made it through Prohibition. I think he went out of business in the 40s. Guys like Nathanson had to become jewelers because that was that was all. They had to find something else to do. Yes.
When you dig, are you digging with a shovel, with a pitchfork? What? A shovel?
Yeah, I have a shovel, a pitchfork, a probe, a pair of clippers, and good strong boots and gloves, and a bottle of water.
How do you know once you find a site, you just show up with your shovel and they let you dig? How does it work?
Most places that we dig are places that have been dug for a long time, so people just say, oh, the guys are back digging bottles again. Behind the lanes for the first couple years that we dug back there, we were kind of, worried about somebody's gonna, turn us in and the cops will come. I mean, I've been thrown out of places before. The cops have come. I've been taken out of the woods at gunpoint. I admit it. Yeah, but it wasn't because we were digging bottles. There was extenuating circumstances. We were digging along the canal on the Highland Park side, and we'd been digging there for like months. And all of a sudden, we get this, come out with your hands up, and they got guns pointed at us. and they have us standing in the middle of the lot. It's really hot, and they take our information, and they come back and they tell us that somebody said that you were burying bodies back here. So and that's not the first time that's happened too. That we were burying bodies, and just a week ago they had found a body there. So of course they thought that something unusual was happening, and they took us out of the woods that way. But I get called out, like down in Lakewood, I dig a dump off of Cedar Bridge down by the Blue Claw Stadium, and I get pulled out of there a lot because they poach deer back there. And they call you on the microphone, they have the guy with the blue truck come out, and you walk out, and the first thing they ask you is, where are your guns? And I'm like, guns? I'm digging bottles. And then they look at you like you got two heads. And unfortunately, I got a get out of jail card free in Lakewood because I dug with a Lakewood police officer for 10 years, and his name gets mentioned. It's like, oh yeah, it's okay. You go back to what you're doing. Even up in after they cleared us up in New Brunswick, they let us go back in and dig. All right, you guys can go back and finish what you're doing. So yes.
When you first started, you showing one of the first bottles, you mentioned syrup. I mean, are those mostly beer, or what other kinds of things? I think you also mentioned like the mineral water or something.
There's mineral water. I mean, when we go into a dump to dig, we're not looking for just beers and sodas. We're looking for medicines and canning jars and chemical bottles and poisons and hair bottles. I mean, it's the whole gamut of everything comes out of the dumps. I mean, we dig doll parts, we dig china plates, we dig stoneware jugs sometimes, we dig lots of marbles, especially in the 30s dumps. I have like thousands of marbles, and I have in mason jars all over my basement. It's just amazing what comes out of the ground. That's why it's such an addiction for me. It's like every time I put my shovel in the ground, it's a treasure hunt. You never know. Sometimes, like this past weekend when we were digging over at the lanes, we got what we called skunked. We found really hardly anything. We were there for 4 hours, and maybe I got 10 bottles that might be worth $20. That's about it. And then sometimes you come out of there with bottles that are worth hundreds of dollars. You never know. Yeah. Hey.
In view of the short shelf life of the beer, what was the next great thing in bottle closures, and did it revolutionize bottling overnight, or was it a gradual process?
There was an endless quest to find the perfect bottle stopper, and they had weird crown closures, they had corks, they had lightning stoppers. Unfortunately, Long Branch didn't have a lot of weird closure bottles, but it wasn't till the Pure Food and Drug Act that and they revolutionized the crown top that became the standard closure in the industry.
And did that give us bottle caps as we know them?
Yeah, that's basically what you have now. Yeah, instead of using a pry thing off, you just twist them off. But it's the same style. I mean, you could probably twist a cap onto that. Revolutionary. Yeah, it was hard at first for the bottling companies too, because the machinery to crown these things, to cap them, was very expensive, and most of the time, when you got your beer, it came down in 50-gallon casks, and you put it up on a thing, and you ran it down on a rubber hose into the bottle, and then you closed it up, put it in the case. You could bottle hundreds of cases in a day. Where now you had to buy machines that filling. You had to buy a filling machine, then you had to buy a capping machine. So it was expensive, and another reason why some of the bottling companies also went out of business was that they couldn't afford the closures. Although they still made these blob tops. By 1910, most of the glass was machine made. It wasn't even hand blown anymore. All these bottles that I have here are all hand blown. There's no machine made glass here. But you could still get a blob top in a machine machine made, just so you could continue using these, the lightning stoppers. They didn't recommend it, but they did let you do that.
Where were most of the bottles made?
A lot of the beer, a good chunk of the beer bottles were made at Diamond Glass Works out in Royersford, PA. Some of these earlier squats were made by the Salem Glass Works. Very few were actually made in New Jersey. Yeah, most of the big producer of blob tops was Royerford Glassworks out in the Diamond Glassworks out in Royerford, PA. I'm just trying to see if I have one with their later on. These on the bottom of the bottles, you see a lot of numbers. Those are the mold numbers for your slug plate. This his slug plate for this bottle was EL7. Yeah, when they blew these bottles, everybody had a little. This is they call it a slug plate, and everybody, when they would call up and just say, I need 500 champagne beers, and my slug plate number is EL7, so they would go back into the rack, which has like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's slug plates, and they pull yours out, and then it would start blowing up your order.
Are these slug plates collectible?
If you're collecting the beers, they are, yeah. Because, each of these, I'm surprised, none of these have Diamond Glassworks on them. Most of the Red Bank bottlers have the Diamond Glasswork marks on the bottom. Now these all they just have their slug plate numbers on them. Huh. Yes, any? Yeah,
Just learning that most of these were blown glass, wouldn't
Yeah.
that make them vary? Wouldn't the bottles be different?
They're
How
hand
would they
blown.
keep-
They're
how would
hand
they
blown.
keep them?
They're blown into a mold. So they're pretty. They're except for the tops on them. They're pretty consistent. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
the mold.
Yeah, with the mold. The only thing is that before 1890, they had not figured out a way to blow the top into the mold. After 1890, they figured that out, and so they would have to apply the top on afterwards. So they would blow the bottle, it would come out. They would put it on a holder, and then they would stick a blob of glass on top, and then they would tool it down. So on the earlier blob tops, you might get unusual looking tops on them. Like this one here is an exceptionally big donut on the top of this blob top, where this bottle is of the same age, and it's just a little more uniform. So they could be a little more cruder in the tops, but as far as they're pretty much all the same. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there any evidence as to what this beer tasted like, or all these different ones?
We've dug them with liquid in them.
I know. Your research.
I don't. The beer had a really short shelf life. There was no preservatives in it, and I think sometimes before they even went through a cask, it could be bad. I've not read any articles in the paper where people got sick off the beer. But I would guess that if you got a case of beer, you probably finished it off in probably 2 or 3 days. And I think it would start to go bad because even refrigeration was kind of tough back then too. Even the carbonated beverages, I don't think these closures really held the carbonation in because when they bottled soda, they had to use they bottled at 250 psi to force the carbonation through the filler machines. And the bottles were like explosive. It wasn't unusual to have a couple guys in the bottling works that were missing a few fingers. When they were bottling soda, they put on these leather aprons and big gloves and like a fencing mask because these bottles would explode. Yeah, it was kind of dangerous. It was dangerous bottling in some aspects. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask you about, like the old Coca-Cola bottles. They date back really.
The earliest Coke bottle is.
They were very thick bottles.
Yeah, it's like 1888 somewhere. I think 1888 was around the time when Coke came in, and I don't have one of that. I don't have the exact style bottle here with me.
Right.
That's because Long Branch didn't really use them. They would call them Hutchinsons because of the patent stopper in them. But the early Cokes were in actually bottles, and they were very heavy glass, and up till around the turn of the century they used them, and then they went to a standard kind of like crown top, straight-sided amber Cokes.
Right. So and those were just pretty much like a standard, like one size too.
Yeah, they were mostly the earlier ones were like 6 ounces. And in 1915, they patented the wasted Cokes, and I think they went to 8 ounces then. But anything pre-1915 would be we call a straight-sided Coke. You know, it would say Coca-Cola, and then on the bottom, somewhere along the bottom, it would say, you know, like Newark, New Jersey. There not too many. There's actually the straight-sided Cokes in New Jersey are really rare. There's only there's one from Newark and there's one from Atlantic City. They're the only ones that I've ever heard of. They're tough to find.
You said that the brewers were not allowed to bottle the beer?
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah,
Why not?
the brewers were not allowed to bottle their beer till after 1900. And you know, I just before I came here, I wanted to double check why, and I couldn't find it. I don't know why. I don't know why they were not allowed to bottle their own beer. But after 1900, yes, they were actually bottling their own stuff. Yeah.
How come so many Italian families? I mean, you start collecting it. Minetti, Mazzatomini, Deducci, they're all Italian names.
It's just a lot of Italians in town, I would guess. I mean, you know, I think, you know, most of the freehold bottlers are all Irish, and you know, Red Bank, I don't know, French, Degenering, Crates, you know, there's a couple of Sant'Angelo and Mazzacca, they were Italian. But you know, it's funny that most of the bottlers in Long Branch were either Jewish or Italian.
Italian. And
Yeah.
they bottled, like, this is early though, like when did bottling stop in Long Branch?
Pretty much
Prohibition?
Prohibition probably wiped out 99% of them. You know, like in Long Branch, Helt made it through, and Red Bank, Crates, and Degenering made it through. But there were very few. You know, Smith and Freehold made it through, and Prohibition, you know, totally wiped out the bottling industry.
Now, during Prohibition, when people bought bottles and beer, right?
Well, they weren't supposed to.
I know, well, so they did. Did it come in bottles though?
Most of the dump we dig in Lakewood, which is a solid Prohibition dump, most of the whiskeys and the beers are English or German. You know. Mm-hmm.
The companies you mentioned, Glenn, that did make it through Prohibition, were they companies that were more diversified and they bottled other things?
They all bottled. If they bottled carbonated beverages, they had a better chance of surviving. Yes. If they, you know, a lot of the big guys were doing everything. I mean, you know, like my main guy, French in Red Bank, he bottled olive oil. You know, he would put anything. You know, they were wholesale bottlers. You know, you wouldn't think that they were just bottling beer, except in Long Branch, they were beer bottlers. They were beer bottlers. And Helt did soda. H.R. West and Company did soda. Schultz did soda. Lippincott did soda. McKenna did soda. I'm assuming Bennett did soda. Most of these styles were the squatty styles were mostly strictly soda. But most of these guys were bottle in the barn, throw it in a wagon, take it down to the beach, and sell it a bottle at a time. You know, they were you know, really low overhead kind of operations. Yes.
Have you ever got any intact bottles out of the ocean? Or on
No,
the beach?
I don't stray out into the ocean too much.
Well,
Yeah.
no, washing up after storms.
Not on the ocean side. On the bay side, yes.
Right.
You can after a good storm, if you walk through Sandy Hook, you can find bottles that have washed up on the beach there. In fact, I went up to New York City last week, and I was looking out the window, and when we were going over the trestle in Red Bank on the Middletown side, I saw blob tops at low tide laying in the marsh, and I could not figure a way to get back there without getting in trouble. Yeah, you can't walk on the railroad tracks anymore. That's how we used to find half our dumps, was walking the railroad tracks. In fact, another time we almost got arrested. We were last year. We were walking in Farmingdale. We were walking down the old Central tracks, and we touched something, and we set off the gates to come down, and the gates wouldn't come back up. Yeah, I know. And the state police were there, and you know, here we come walking up the tracks with backpacks on and shovels, and yeah, they immediately come over to find out what's going on with these two guys. But they have no clue. I mean, we might have bumped something, I don't know, but you know, they were not they thought we did it, so, you know, we had to do a little bit of talking to get out of that. And you start pulling the bottles out of your backpack. Oh, look, there's Farmingdale milk bottles. We just dumped these. Yeah, and that, for some reason, you know, police officers and bottles seem to go together, because as soon as you talk bottles with a police officer, they're like cool about that. There's a lot of them that are collectors. I know quite a few that are collectors, so I think they understand that. And I don't know. Yes?
How do you clean the bottles?
For the most part, just soap and water. A bottle like this, the only way you could clean this is it would have to be tumbled, and it's a process that's like a rock tumbler. You know, they fill the bottle up with copper nuggets and cerium oxide for cutting agent, and then they plug it up, and it just spins like on a hot dog roller, and it just cuts away the etched glass. And when it's done, it's polished up nice and pretty. On a bottle like this, I would be skeptical, because you do lose some of the embossing when you cut it. So this bottle is lightly embossed, and I would prefer just leaving this one alone, I think. Like this one here is so strongly embossed. Like this one could be tumbled and it would be fine. Usually I wash them in soap and water, then I stick them in muriatic acid for a week, and that takes off the rust and some of the calcium stains. But normally, if the glass is etched, the only way you're going to clean it is by tumbling. The glass was not pure. It was really not. There was a lot of impurities in the glass. There was no regulations on the glass. They blew these bottles up as fast as possible because they had a lot of orders to fill. And the acid in the ash reacts with the glass, and it just etches it. And you know, nothing you can do about this except for tumbling. Yes.
What's the most valuable thing you found, or the most amazing thing that you found?
The best stuff, the coolest stuff that ever came out of the ground was when I was digging in Philly. When we were digging outhouses for 5 years in Philadelphia. Oh, outhouses are, you know, when people kind of freak out when you tell them you're digging outhouses. But in Philadelphia, they went to city sewer and city water like in 1850. So the outhouses were supposed to be filled in with clay. We were supposed to stop using them and fill them with clay. Most people found out that it was much easier to dump their garbage down in them because garbage was expensive. So most of the pits that we dug were just, you know, 25-foot trash pits. Some of them, we did get some of them with what we call the night soil in it, which is like it's like peat moss. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't smell, it doesn't bother you. Although, I always wondered what kind of diseases we were releasing because some of these holes are airtight for 150 years, and you know, we popped them open, and but no, we never got sick. You know, we never had any ill effects from them. But usually if you got one that was deeper than 15 feet, you probably would have a night soil layer. Like we dug one down in Gray's Ferry that was 32 feet deep. It took us 3 weekends to dig it, but we got 700 bottles out of it. And the best bottle that I have came out of that hole, and it's a puce. And the color, a glass in the color of puce is any color that's not a normal color. That's the definition of it. It's like a pink gray color, but it's a Washington Taylor Never Surrenders Doyletville Glassworks flask, 1860, in a pink gray color, and one almost identical to it went off an auction for $10,000. So that's supposed to be in my coffin with me. My wife might have other ideas about that. Yes.
I just have one question. You said something about polishing. Isn't it like other antiques where if you do polish it, you do change the patina, and then it's less valuable?
No, in today's market, because it's so hard to get bottles in good condition now, that even the big glass houses, the auction places, they will actually, you know, they'll put in their description lightly tumbled, and that's supposed to mean it's okay. So, no, I don't. 20 years ago, yes, you know, when you tumbled a bottle, you probably took some of the value away. But there's so few good bottles out there for sale now. You know, eBay changed the way everything is done, and bottles got just sucked off the market really quick. It actually improved the bottle collecting hobby, You know, a lot of people were out there collecting that never even, you know, knew what a bottle was before, and they look on eBay and, wow, look at these pretty green bottles, and they start paying ridiculous money for them. And so some bottles that we would sell around here for $10, you could put them on eBay and get $50 for them because they didn't see them out there. Bottles are very territorial also. You know, you're not going to find many Long Branch bottles out, you know, in Idaho. But if there's a guy out in Idaho that's collecting picture blobs, this becomes an important bottle for him. And every once in a while, we'll see a local bottle on eBay go for $150, and it has no business. You know, it's just not worth that much. And it's because somebody somewhere else really liked it. Joe.
Sweetie orange soda.
Yes. Tomani's bottled that over in Overton.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I have one still with the soda in it.
And does it say Long Branch on it?
I don't remember, I stuck it away.
Yeah, you have to look on the back and see if it's bottled by Tomani's, because they had the Sunny franchise.
Now I see paper labels and I see the embossing.
Mm-hmm.
When were the other ones popular, where they were like painted on?
Yeah, painted label sodas. They started doing painted labels in the 20s. Some very basically in the 20s, a little bit in the 30s. But by the 40s, that was pretty much embossed. The embossing was pretty much gone by the 40s, and everything was painted labels on it. In the 30s, they went to like the deco-y sodas that have all the like cut panels in them and stuff. Like a Smith from Freehold is a perfect example. Even Kratz's from Red Bank have a real paneled, fancy, you know, looking bottle. And I'm trying to think. Help used just a straight-sided. There was no fancy 30 sodas from Long Branch. Yeah, yeah, they would use just plain bottles.
The two paper ones here, how long were they buried?
They don't come. Yeah, they weren't in the ground.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Sometimes you'll dig a bottle with a label on it, and you put it up there, and you look at it, and you just watch it disintegrate off the bottle because a lot of these places that we dig are, you know, the stuff's airtight and it's been in there forever, and as soon as the air touches it, this bottle actually came out of an attic, and this bottle I think also came out of an attic. I got 5 of these from a guy that was pulling down the ceiling in his attic, and they came down and all whacked him in the head, so that probably kept them from breaking. And I bought all, and I've got, you know, a couple green ones and a couple. The Help also did an amber crown top too, which is the amber ones is like really rare. Yes.
After Prohibition, when the brewing started back up again, was the business changed as far as the bottles?
Yeah. I don't follow the beer that much after Prohibition. I kind of like, you know, I cut it off at Prohibition. It's like this industry ended, you know, in 1920, and that's kind of like where I cut my collection off. So after Prohibition, I know a lot of the breweries got back online again, and even then, a lot of people, you know, they had a lot of trouble. A lot of them only lasted a year or two. Just the big companies, they lasted for sure. Mm-hmm. Any more? Yeah.
What are most of the bottles worth that you have?
Between $10 and $50 probably. Yeah. You know, just like well, actually, maybe this one. The McKenna's are a little bit more. But you know, like a one of these Saccos. You know, if you saw that at a flea market, it would be between $5 and $10. One of these brown saloons, we know what we would pay for one of these, right, Phil? Yeah. These can be pricey. Yes, these can be pricey. People like them when they have lager beer on them, or beer bottlers and stuff. So they would command a little bit of a premium. You know, this Marin from Long Branch, even though it's a really rare bottle, nobody would know that but me. So, you know, it would be a $10 bottle. In my eyes, it should be worth way more than that because it's so rare. But, you know, a lot of people, they look at these blob tops and they all look the same. So, you know, they can't understand why one bottle would be worth $10 and one bottle might be worth $50. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
How far away would the beer be distributed? Was it just very local?
Yeah. Most Long Branch being an example, they were with so many bottling companies in Long Branch. They probably covered a 5-block area, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. And if there were 2 or 3 of them in the same area, they would each they would each specialize in a specific beer. So if you like Ballantine, you like Vogel or something, that you would just go you'd go visit him or have him deliver. Most of the time they would just deliver it to the house. You'd put a card in your window, and they would just drop a case off.
Plus the big hotels.
Yeah.
The big hotels on the ocean.
Same thing. Companies like Helt probably distributed more to like the hotels and the grocery stores. I know, like in Red Bank, French, he distributed to a lot of grocery stores, and you would buy his beer and soda, from the grocery store, and I guess they would get a cut of it too. It was like out in Lincroft, there was a toll house on Newman Springs Road, and I can't think of the cross street there. But out in front there's a picture of it I have at home, and it has, French's soda, sarsaparilla, and ginger ale. So at the toll house, he was distributing, his products there too. So I guess he contracted through them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Earlier in your presentation, you were talking about people coming into your home and taking your bottles.
Yes.
So if I went out and bought a bottle of beer, I don't own the bottle?
No. These bottles were on loan. Most of them on the back will say, "This bottle is not to be sold. This bottle must be returned." Yeah, when you go into the bottling company and you buy a case, you have to you leave a deposit, and the intentions of that was so they would get their bottles back. That was the most expensive part of bottling, was the bottles themselves. They made their own syrup. And they gravity fed the beer out of casks, so they were not bottling soda. The bottles were the most expensive thing in it. Yeah.
So you didn't pay for the bottle?
No. They were
basically bought the beer.
Yeah, you bought the
beer.
beer.
You had an obligation to bring the bottle back.
Yes, just
Or
like
somebody
deposit
was gonna come
bottles.
Find you in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah, just like deposit bottles from the '60s. It's just that a lot of people found out that these reusable lightning stoppers were handy. And you could see bottling ketchup in this. It easily could be done, but if you did it, you had to hide it well, because if they saw it, they would come in and they would actually dump the ketchup out onto the floor and take the bottle back.
Could you be arrested? I mean, was it?
No, they wouldn't arrest you because the agents didn't have the arrest power, but they were allowed to go into your house and confiscate stamped bottles if you had them in your possession. I mean, they could come onto your property and go into your barn if somebody ratted you out and said, "Yeah, he's got 100 Helt's bottles in his barn. He won't bring them back." So the agent would go and investigate, and he would physically remove the bottles and take them back to the bottling works, and then the bottling works was supposed to give him, a penny a bottle or something like that. So that's how the organization stayed funded, by getting returning the bottles.
Ties into when you first said it, I didn't quite understand it, why people were breaking the tops off.
Yeah,
So they didn't have to return.
So because if John Helt got a case of Gassman's bottles back by mistake, he was obligated to take those bottles back over to John Helt. But if he didn't feel like doing that, he would just go behind the works and knock all the tops off with a hammer, and then throw them in the dump.
They're no good anymore.
Yeah, they're no good. Yeah, once the tops are gone, you can't use them anymore. Yeah, and we dig many pockets of broken, blob tops with all the tops knocked off. So there was a bottling company, dumping a few 55-gallon drums of other people's glass. Yeah, in the back.
I was just wondering how much a case of beer would have been back there.
$1.50.
For the bottles.
Yeah, a case of beer was $24, and it was either $1.25 or $1.50. Yes.
My mother said when she was a little girl and she lived to be 100, she said on Fridays her father would give her a quarter and she'd go with a wooden bucket to the bar and they would fill the bucket up with beer.
Really? Wow. That's different.
My father used to send me across the street to the bar with a bucket, and they do the same thing. Fill it up with beer for you. I forget how much it was then,
that has to be something after Prohibition, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. My dad never came home with buckets of beer. Yes.
Where did they get the material? This glass is made of sand. Where did they get the material from?
South Jersey has the purest glass blowing sand in all of the country, and they would mine the sand and send it, and you know, either train it out or barge it to other up to New England. Same thing with clay. New Jersey had the best potting clay for stoneware, and there, you know, many companies had mining projects to mine clay and send it up to Bennington or send it out, you know, up into New England for the stoneware companies up there too.
So what you were talking about before with the amethyst color wasn't, that was something they added?
Yeah, added to it.
Or was
Yeah,
just like-
yeah. This aqua color is the natural color of glass when it's blown. In order to get it any other color, you would have to add, let's see. I know cobalt. Cobalt would turn it blue. I think iron oxide would turn it green. I'm trying to think what would turn it amber. These things I should know. Yeah, but yeah, unless you know, 99% of the bottles are just this aqua color. Very unusual to get them in, you know, amber, because they were premiums. And I know when they bottling beer, you know, in the 1890s, they thought that they would preserve it better in amber glass. So you definitely saw more ambers and green glass in the 1890s than you saw before then. Yes.
You said that ceramics places and bottlers from other states would buy the clay or the sand from New Jersey. Do they still do that?
Probably not. I know I'm certainly not the clay. Most of the big clay pits up in, you know, around South Amboy and stuff, they're been shut down for many years. But and I don't recall hearing them, you know, mining the sand and sending it out in New Jersey anymore. They probably use synthetic stuff for most of the blown glass now. It's probably not even natural stuff anymore. Yeah, like I say, after Prohibition, you know, my interest in glass kind of wanes. Just give me something from 1850. Give me something from 1820. That makes me happy. Yes.
Can they melt down bottles to make new glass?
A lot of times, there was an insulator company, Brookwood Insulators, up in where were they at, Bill?
That's up by South River.
South River,
yeah.
and they would buy you know, broken glass to melt down to make insulators. So I assume that they probably could, yeah, send them back. I know that one company I know I heard about the piles and piles of glass back there, you know, the bottles. We dug a spot up in Patterson where we dug into nothing but broken squat sodas, blue ones, green ones, wonderful stuff. And they broke the bottles to use for drainage. That's how they ran the water into the Passaic River. Was that they put a 4-foot layer of broken glass. I mean, it works. It's perfect, you know. So why not? Definitely. Yes.
How many bottles do you own?
I don't know, 3,000 maybe.
Where's the farthest place you got? Farthest dig?
Yeah. What's that?
Where's the farthest place you went to dig?
I've dug in North Carolina. I've dug in Virginia, Philadelphia, Staten Island, New York City, Queens. Not too Utica, New York too. You know, if I get an invite, I'm loading the truck, going on the road. Yes.
How long have you been doing this?
30 years. Yeah, I've been digging. I got out of the Navy in 1979. Went to work at Fort Monmouth, and there was a guy there that I worked with who dug bottles, David Palmer out of Keensburg. And one day the Army had a laser range out in Earl that they bounced lasers off of to make the optical stuff for the bombs we see drop and everything. Anyway, on the weekends we used to drive tanks back and forth on overtime. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, after we used to grade the dirt roads, and one day we were going in for lunch, and Dave said he was going to stay out and dig bottles. So, you know, and when the dust cleared and the truck left, I was still standing there. I don't know what on earth possessed me to go into the woods and dig bottles with him, and I can't even say I don't even know what I was thinking. But I followed him into the woods, and he started scratching around, and he started finding Red Bank blob tops, and you know, he says, "Oh, you're living in Red Bank, here, take this bottle with you." So I'm like, this is really amazing. So he always said, you know, keep your eyes to the ground, and everything valuable is in the ground. And he told me that if you go on, if you see construction going on, to walk the sites, go around the old farmhouses, go look at, when you're going behind a farm, look for the largest tree, because all the garbage was fertilizer, so everything around the garbage grew bigger, and it definitely works. But like 2 weeks later, after Dave gave me this quick lesson in bottle digging, behind the YMCA in Red Bank, they had dug out this lot. The Sorleses were combining two buildings into one, and they tore out this huge tree. And I walked over, and lo and behold, the whole rim around the hole, there was bottles sticking out everywhere. So I didn't even have a shovel. I just picked them out of the wall, putting them in a bucket, taking them home. And I went to the mall and I got this book on pricing bottles and finding out that I'm picking out bottles that are worth $50 and $100. So this is great. And I went back there like 3 times before they finally filled it in. So yeah, my first big adventures, and it graduated to digging outhouses in Philadelphia and construction sites in Queens, and now all those sites are gone. It's hard to dig in Philly now because when you dig an outhouse, the cops would not bother you as long as you filled the holes in. Well, this group from Lancaster came, and they were leaving 30-foot holes open. And now we used to be able to get on any construction site with a case of beer or a bottle of whiskey. You could bribe the guards, and they would let you walk around, and most of the time you could pick everything right up off the ground. You didn't have to dig it. But you can't buy your way onto a lot in Philly, so I stopped going down there. And yes.
Is there any question then of the ownership? Like the Sorleses in Red Bank, for example, you're on their property.
Yeah, it's funny. I went insane, so I would have pleaded insanity. Nobody bothered me back there at all. Every day after work, I would go over there and I would pick around and I'd pick through the bottles, and then I'd bring my pitchfork and I'd knock. I pretty much filled the hole in for them by the end. And then, in fact, up by the house closer, they had dug a trench for a pipe, and I found bottles up there too. A lot of little inkwells and stuff. We got one of my best inkwells out of there, a little cobalt blue umbrella ink, and nobody bothered me.
Nobody ever says, "Hey, you got that on my property."
No, never. No, and in some properties that we ask permission, we always offer the homeowner, a cut of what we get, and most of the time they don't even want it. They look at it like, well, no, I don't want this stuff in my house. And some people do. Some people like it. We dug a couple outhouses up in Hoboken where we let the homeowners, take some stuff, and it got us to go into the next yard, and then we just went right down the block, and everybody was fascinated, by some of the photos in here are some of the photos of the outhouses that I dug. In fact, when you get done, look at the cases. This is all pretty much pre-1860s stuff that we dug in Philadelphia. And there's some pictures of us digging, and a few pictures of us digging here. We dug a great dump up in South Amboy in the late 1980s, Gordon Street, that was like 30 foot deep. We had to terrace the dirt out. It was so deep. But we got really cool stuff because all the Rockingham potteries were up there, and we would get whole pieces of Rockingham out of there, and all the clay marbles would come out of there, and we got then. My second best bottle came out of South Amboy. It was 6 inches under the ground. A third dump that we used to dig down 20 feet, I found the best bottle 6 inches under the ground. Joe.
Interesting short story. My friend Eddie back there who digs gave me a soda bottle from Bayonne that had the street address and everything. And I'm thinking, who do I know that lives in Bayonne? And I thought of Len Kissick, who was a lawyer here in town. So I went over to his office, and when I handed the bag to him, he took the bottle out and his mouth fell. I says, "What's the matter?" He said, "This was my parents' business."
Really? That's cool.
It had like 907 to 1002 on the street. Mm-hmm. They lived in one house. Next door was the bottling company, and he said he used to deliver the soda when he was a little boy.
Wow, cool.
Small world.
Never found too many people that were looking for blob tops from their family, but milk bottles, yes. It seemed like half of everybody either owned a dairy, delivered milk, or had something to do with the dairy. And I mean, milk bottles were like incredibly hot. You know, I would get calls every week for, oh, I'm looking for this McGill's Dairy, and one of the girls at work was their family was McGill's Dairy in Belmar, and every time I would get one of the bottles, I would ship it over to her office.
He had a collection from his family of bottles, but he had never saw the one that I gave him because it was a big one.
Wow, cool.
And he had called his brother right away to tell him. So it was a nice thing.
Yeah, there's a girl from Bayonne that we find bottles for. They were the Tierney Soda Works, and anytime we get a bottle from them, we call her up, and she'll drive right down from Bayonne and get that bottle right away. She's afraid that we might give it to somebody else. Any other questions?
No?
No?
Oh, thank you so much.
You learned a little bit.
Make sure to take a look in the cases. The stuff in there is really fascinating. And the refreshments are available right outside the door.